He is the master of paradise of the Castle of Paradise. After some time, a lady thanks Huiwen for saving them earlier, while she is glad that she seems to be doing well. She recognizes Dokja when he was at Jumho Station and is also grateful to him for saving them. Her daughter also thanks him, and after that, Huiwen congratulates him on his resurrection, saying it took a while. Dokja says she doesn't seem happy about his arrival, but she asks him to talk to him privately for a moment. She then tells him that she arrived in paradise 4 days ago, and on her first day, she distrusted everything. On her second day, she suspected everything, but then she started wavering on her third day. Today is her 4th day when Dokja arrives there, and suddenly, she starts thinking about whether it is meaningful for them to continue clearing the scenarios. Dokja asks him if it isn't too quick for him to waver like that, or maybe she has been feeling that way deep down inside all this time. Suddenly, they see 2 guards dragging a man who asks them to let him go and says he will pay for everything he stole. Huiwen tells him that the place is safer than Seoul and that the different species don't discriminate against each other. They are willing to help each other out when the need comes. There is also a house for everyone to live in, and there is also work for everyone. They don't have to worry about being betrayed by their friends or being attacked by monsters at night. They don't have to live being chased by the scenarios, and they don't have to keep nightmares that they killed someone. Moreover, they don't have to end up losing anyone anymore. Dokja thinks he brought Huiwen up himself after he entered this world, and she was someone who had to kill so that he could go on not killing. Dokja states she is free to stay if she likes it there, and he also thinks this place is very safe, and it could be that this is the safest place they can find out of all the scenarios. However, he refuses to stay there and will return soon. He reveals that this isn't the end and that he needs to keep participating in the scenarios. Huiwen asks him what the end he is thinking of, and he replies he can't tell her about that. She asks him if the end will be a better place than this, and if everyone will be unhappy if they don't carry on with the scenarios. After that, Huiwen says she will wait for him there, and that he can call her if anything happens. Dokja is surprised to see a white house on top of a hill, and thinks the lord of the castle usually stays in a luxurious residence within the castle. Suddenly, he uses the skill of perpetual motion and appears from nowhere and seems like watering the plants. He asks Dokja if he knows about these plants and replies that they bloom anew daily and are called paradise flowers. Their flowers bloom at dawn, bear fruit at night, and drop down, and the plant consumes the fruit to bloom its flower again. It keeps repeating this process forever, and the Lord is impressed by his knowledge and says he never gets sick of watching them, and their vitality is indeed awe-inspiring. Dokja says their name doesn't really ring true, and if this plant were really in perpetual motion, the flower would bloom even if he didn't water them. The Lord asks him to put such a little flaw aside when they have such beautiful flowers. Dokja asks him why he is looking for him, and he replies that he wants to say hello. He introduces himself again, but Dokja interrupts him and says he is the Lord of Paradise, Reinhard von. He is one of the notorious 10 evils that appear in TWSA, and Dokja checks his character profile and finds out that he has a demon attribute. His stats are outstanding, his overall stats have surpassed the scenario limit, and almost all his skill levels are at maximum proficiency. Dokja asks him why he wants to see him, and he replies that he is curious about the rumors he heard about him. When he entered the scenario, all sorts of beings talked about him. He couldn't help but feel threatened at that time, while Dokja says he is quite humble for a demon marquis who is ranked 2nd. Reinhard is surprised and says he has really done his research, and Dokja wonders if he should attack him. It's not that he doesn't stand a chance, but if he kills him, this paradise will be ruined. Reinhard reveals that in the world he comes from, Dark Castle was the 34th scenario, and he remembers the moment he fell into this place 800 years ago, when these planes were completely empty. All he had was his rank, and even without any instructions, incarnations were hard at work killing one another. Therefore, he created this paradise, and the Docubus call these planes the graveyard of scenarios, but he begs to differ. Although he has become a blood-soaked demon over the years he spent there, he can confidently say that new life can blossom there, where there are no more scenarios. Dokja thinks if he hadn't read the original novel, he might have been awestruck by his philosophy. Yoonhyuk called him the purest evil in the novel. He calls him Constellation Dokja Kim and says he must consider moving on to the next scenario. He asks him to give up since such a thing doesn't exist. He exclaims that many powerful men have sought out the hidden scenario, but none of them have even managed to clear the Dark Castle. They just end up in despair at the vanity of the scenarios, and he doesn't want him to become like them. Dokja asks him what he wants from him, and he asks him to protect Paradise alongside him. He says he needs his help, while Dokja makes some noises from a side, where the man from earlier begs the guards to leave him. He says they don't need to do this just because he stole something. Dokja thinks just as perpetual motion can't exist on its own, and he knows very well that Paradise doesn't exist without any sacrifice. He is notified that a few constellations are chuckling unpleasantly while the guards take the man inside the prison. After a while, Dokja calls him and says there is no such thing as Paradise, just like perpetual motion can't exist alone. He asks him to give him the next scenario. He already knows he found it 700 years ago, while Reinhardt is shocked and asks him how he knew about it. Dokja says he even challenged himself with some powerful allies, but he failed and survived alone. After that, he created this paradise, and Dokja says all the scenarios of the star stream exist to stimulate, but nothing is stimulating there. Everything is too peaceful, and he asks him not to expect their deal with the Dokibus to last forever. There is no way the star stream would allow a space like this for so long. Reinhardt then calls him Constellation Dokja Kim and asks what else he knows. He replies he knows everything, and maybe even things he doesn't know about. He states that Reinhardt will die, and Paradise will fall. After a while, he returns, and Huiwen asks him if he is done talking to him. He observes that she still seems shaken. She's probably torn between her loyalty towards him and the comfort that Paradise gives her. He calls her and asks if she will go shopping while Reinhardt watches him from a distance. He thinks even if Dokja is a constellation, he is still only half a constellation. He thinks it's rare to see the 72 demon kings devouring newly made constellations in the star stream. He is notified that the constellation Black Flame Dragon is warning him not to take Dokja's words lightly. He is shocked that even Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, one of the most evil constellations that even the 72 demon kings prefer not to get involved with, is defending him. He thinks Paradise will not fall because he has managed to defend this place alone for 700 years, and will never lose as long as he fights there in Paradise. On the other side, Dokja and Huiwen are walking in the streets, and she says it has been a while since they were able to take a relaxed walk like this. Huiwen asks him if there isn't anything he wants to ask her, and he counter-questions her what he should ask. She says he can ask her about her favorite colors and food, and he replies that he wouldn't ask these questions even on a blind date. She asks him if he has ever gone on a blind date, and she says it's just that they have never talked about things like that. They never told each other what they used to do, what schools they went to, and their cell phone numbers. She thinks it is too long for them to start talking about such things. She seems sad and says the soul they remember won't be there even if they return. She asks him why they should carry on with the scenarios when everything they used to know is long gone. Dokja praises her and says she is good with a sword, and she is calm and unforgiving, more so than anyone among them at the sight of injustice, especially when she sees someone abuse their power against the weak. She always put herself on the front lines of battles, and never once complained that things were difficult. She never trusts people, but is actually very affectionate, and she is also the first to come running when a companion falls in danger. He says he knows enough about her, and Huiwen says she is not that type of person. Dokja says he only knows these things about him because he kept participating in the scenarios, but they don't have a home to return to. This is why he thinks they should keep working on the scenarios. Meanwhile, he is notified that the item he commissioned to be made has arrived. Huiwen says all these things are a bit difficult for her to understand, and Dokja says he is not saying this in the hopes of having her act a certain way, and all she has to do is keep living life the way she used to. He has ordered an item made from a fire dragon's bone, the heart of a demon, and the nucleus from various monsters. These are the things that only Huiwen can use in this world. He then gives her the Sword of Judgment and says he told her they would be shopping. This is a present for her that he has specially bought for her. After some time, they are about to leave Paradise, and Sayong calls him a fool for doing this. He says his part is done in this place, and Paradise isn't for him to save. Sayong asks him if he will let it flow according to the original novel, and he replies that it will be tough to defeat Reinhardt right now. If he does this, the only thing he will get out of it is a bad story since he has too many supporters. She asks him why he has left all his companions behind, and he replies that they all need some time off. She seems angry and says he has treated them so well all this time, but they have now fallen for some dubious scheme of some demon they only just met. It's understandable why Huiwen made such a choice, and she had a difficult time until now, and Saiyong knows he is just making things. They know that paradise will fall soon, and Huiwen is still roaming the streets there, not knowing what is going to happen. She is happy over some sword he gave her, and Dokja says it was her own choice to stay, so she must take responsibility for it. She asks him why he is taking her with him, and he replies that he can use her help. Suddenly, she punches him and starts kicking badly, saying she wouldn't mind taking some time off. She has changed the face of her avatar into Dokja and hits him. She then asks him about the next step, and Dokja says they will forget about the scenario for around 3 to 4 days and collect stories by hunting down the hidden pieces. She is surprised because she thinks he always focused more on the scenarios and says he will leave it to the others for once. For the time being, they will pretend like they are regressors. The next morning, Huiwen wakes up from a nightmare about paradise falling into ruin. She has been dreaming about it for many days and thinks it may be because she declined the offer to become the captain of the guards there. Whenever she wakes up from dreaming, she finds the sword Dokja left her crying out. The sword of judgment only cries when evil is nearby, but she thinks she hasn't seen anything resembling evil. She goes to the window and looks outside, wondering about the evil there. On the other side, Gilyoung says Dokja has abandoned them, and Jihai says they left them to relax there. He asks her if she knows why the main characters abandon their allies. He exclaims that this is because their allies end up getting in their way, and he left them because they were determined to be useless right now. Jihai gets angry and asks how he thinks Dokja is the main character. He says Master Younghyuk should be the main character if anyone exists. She thinks the last 4 days have been much too peaceful, and all they did during that time was train their skills in their free time and reflect back on the advice Dokja left them. He advised Gilyoung that he needed to make his skills last longer, and if he had any coins to spare, he recommended that he buy patience or indomitable persistence. He can also use the auction or ask his supporting constellation for help. He told Jihai that she invested too many points into agility, and if she had any coins left, she should spend them to raise her strength and mana. Her fighting style will change drastically depending on the attribute she invests in. He advised Yuseong to focus on maxing out her taming and advanced interspecies communication, and if she needs any other raiming-related skills, he can always help her. Jihai goes to Yuseong and asks if she knows what Dokja used to do, and she thinks she would know since she is his incarnation. Incarnations learn more about their supporting constellation as they grow more in sync with them, and Yuseong replies that Dokja is a lonely man and loves to read. Jihai says they already know this about him, and Yuseong says she gets images of numerous pages when she thinks of him. But she can't really tell what they are or read what is written on them. She is sad that she doesn't know anything and hasn't received a stigma yet, while Jihai didn't mean to lower her spirit. Suddenly, she sees Hyunseong going toward a side. He goes to Huiwen and asks if there is something she is worried about. She replies that she has been thinking way too much since things have been so peaceful as of late. Hyunseong also feels the same, and they are notified that the Constellation, the demonic judge of fire, is dissatisfied with Hyunseong's actions. Their constellations are arguing while they sit there quietly and see each other. After a while, he starts the conversation and says he is sure that this peace comes at a cost, and Huiwen says he must believe that Dokja left them there for a reason. Now it's up to them to find that reason. Suddenly, they see some people protesting and demanding the next scenario. They want to move on to the next floor, and Huiwen is shocked to see some protesters in paradise. She wonders why they want to return to participating in the scenarios. She recognizes a woman with her daughter from the Jumho station, and is trying to tell the guards that she is not part of the protest. Huiwen interrupts and asks everyone to calm down and take a step back. The guards ask her not to interfere because they are on official duty. The woman tries to say that she just happened to pass by, and is not part of the protest, but they are not listening to her. Huiwen also shouts at them, and says she isn't a protester, and a guard asks others about what they should do with that woman. He orders her to leave her since they had orders from the Lord, and the guard tells Huiwen that she is a protester and starts running away the moment they start chasing her. Huiwen says anyone would start running away if they chased them, but he asks her why she ran if she has done nothing wrong. He exclaims that her crime will soon be revealed and they don't have time to waste. Huiwen asks them to wait, but the guard angrily says they will arrest her if she interferes with them again, even though the Lord has ordered them to leave them alone. An old man comes to her and says they won't listen since this is the law of paradise. She asks him where they all will take him to, and he replies that they may take them to an underground dungeon. No one is allowed to enter except for the guards, and no one ever returned from there. The woman's daughter cries for her mother, and Huiwen and Hyunseong go to her to console her. She hugs Huiwen and cries loudly, and she wonders if this is really paradise. Jihai comes to them and says they know what they need to do, and they all understand what she wants to say. Hyunseong says it is going to be pretty big, and they wonder if they will be okay on their own. Jihai is sure Dokja left since he trusted them to take care of it. He has probably taken on something bigger himself, and Gilyeon says he must be fighting some monsters with a serious look on his face. Huiwen also gets up and says they should take care of this on her own, and that they can't just keep relying upon Dokja for everything. On the other side, Dokja and Seong are riding a sports car, and she seems very happy and asks him why he didn't do this earlier. He got this artifact by clearing a hidden scenario, SSS grade Ferragini. He thinks this is what it's like being a special regressor and thinks about Younghyuk, who must have enjoyed the sweet life while struggling with the scenarios. Seong is very happy and says she refuses to live like a sucker anymore and will live selfishly for herself from now on. Dokja says this is what she has been doing all this time. She asks him why he is not saying anything because it's not every day that they get to do something like this. Dokja thinks she is right since, back in real life, he would always work overtime and use public transportation because he couldn't afford to buy a car. He shouts loudly that he is the main character, but he regrets it soon when Seong stares at him shockingly. The constellations are embarrassed by his action, and his cleanliness overtakes the abyssal black flame dragon. However, he thinks things should be heating up in paradise now. Given the original novel's plot, he knows they would be just fine on their own. He is surprised that things are going so smoothly, and at this rate, he will clear the scenarios in no time. Suddenly, he is notified that an enormous fate is hoping for his death, and he hurriedly applies the brakes. The car jumps and stops after a big strike, and Hyunseong asks him what he has done when she is enjoying the ride. He asks her to be quiet and is shocked at how he can get a fate message. He receives this message 3 times in a row, and wonders what is going on there. He tells Seong that someone has read his fate, and he wonders if the fate message ever appeared in a row in the original novel. Seong asks if it is something like a future vision, and he tells her it is similar to a future one. Future vision peers into a possible future, and fate is the power that enforces that possible future on its target. For example, he puts his foot down in the accelerator, and if he uses future vision to look 1 second ahead, his car will be running. But if he knew that information, he could choose to force himself not to step on the accelerator by any means necessary. However, it is different when it comes to fate, and if someone ends up learning that Dokja Kim will step on the accelerator, that fate will be forced on him unless it's withdrawn or actualized. Seong says he will eventually step on the accelerator, which creates a possibility issue. It seems this thing called fate has the power to interfere with the scenarios. She asks him who can wield such a power, and he replies that the only being who can read someone's fate, and they are called the Great Nebulae. Suddenly, they leave the car, and Seong asks him what he has seen in the fate notification. He reveals that it said he would die. Suddenly, they see a monster in a humanoid form, and it's different from the other weak monsters they have faced until now. Seong says he should have told him earlier, and it was weird how things were going so smoothly. Suddenly, a nebula comes to him in a humanoid form, and Dokja smells wine from him and asks him if he is an incarnation of Dionysus. He replies that he has a message to relay to him. Dokja asks him if he is there to tell him that he is going to die, and if he was the one who read his fate. He replies that Olympus read his fate, but if he asks if he is one of them, he is wrong. Dokja understands that Olympus split apart, and Dokja thinks things are happening faster than they did in the original novel. The split within Olympus should have happened after the 10th scenario was over. He tells Dokja that it's not just Olympus. Many constellations are after him, and they are very big and powerful. Docs ask him why they are after him, and he replies that the stronger constellations tend to be scared more easily, and they are afraid of the influence he yields. He states that the scenario that just began on Earth is very special, and some constellations believe that this is the scenario they have all been waiting for. Doc just showed up to partake in that important scenario, creating a nuisance for them. He is much less affected by the probability restrictions than the other constellations. On top of that, he is already strong, and his power is growing much faster than the other incarnations, so some Nebula believe that he must either join them or be removed completely. Dokja asks him why he is telling him all this, and he replies that he likes his story and wants him to live. He and a few constellations believe that he has the potential to reach. On the other side, Huiwen reaches the underground dungeon by an invisible cloak. They plan to sneak in since they couldn't break into the underground dungeon all at once. Thanks to Uriel's hermit's cloak, she can make it inside easily, and it seems she is the only one who has made it inside for now. She wonders how deep they are going down, and although they are criminals, it is not necessary to imprison them so deep underground. After a while, they reach outside a prison, and a guard commands others to put them in there and move out. They throw them in the prison and quickly leave the place. The place is a dark underground prison, so dark that Huiwen would have gotten lost if she didn't have her night vision skill. There don't seem to be any basic living facilities or even toilets. The people call for help since there is no food and other things. A girl calls for the old prisoners, but they can't hear anything. Suddenly, Huiwen asks everyone to run from there, but a demon approaches the girl and many other demons attack them and start eating them up. She is fighting and killing them individually, but they are much more powerful and large in numbers. Soon, she killed them, and the people thanked her for saving them. Huiwen is shocked to see that the monsters are actually the monstrous form of the old prisoners. She shockingly runs to a side to observe the place and sees numerous eyes glaring at him. There are many black holes there, from where the monsters are emitting outside. She is shocked to see this type of paradise there, and some people call him and ask what is happening there. She shouts and asks them not to come this way, but suddenly they attack the people and kill many of them. She throws her sword of judgment and kills them in just one blow. Some appear behind her, and Reinhardt appears there, calls her an archangel's incarnation, and asks what she is doing there. He asks her if she has finally decided to become the captain of the guards there.